finding the inverse of a function. Okay, so now I have a function. We're going to not worry about those directions. All I want you to do is find the inverse of this function right here. F of x equals the square root of x minus 2. Okay, so here's what you need to know before we go into this. I'm going to read this up here to you. The inverse of a function f is denoted by f raised to the negative 1. You read f raised to the negative 1 as the inverse of f. So if I saw something like this, I would know that it's the function of x. If I saw something like this, I would know that it is the inverse function of x. Okay? This is the function. This is the inverse. Does everybody see the difference? Function, inverse. So f raised to the negative 1 tells me that I'm looking for the inverse. So I want to take the function and I want to find the inverse of the function. So there's one extra step that you have to do to find the inverse of the function. So basically I work it the same way I work the other problems we've been working, except this time I'm going to take f of x and I'm going to replace f of x with y before I even start. That is the only extra step that I have to do. So what does this right here become? Y equals the square root of x minus 2. Now does this look like a problem we just worked? What do I do with it? Switch the x and the y. So the y is up under a radical sign. I can't touch that radical sign. I can't touch what's under that radical sign until I get rid of that radical sign. How do I get rid of a square root? Square it. So I'm going to take this side and I'm going to square it. And I'm also going to square what's on the left. So now I have x squared equals y minus 2 because the square cancels the square root out. Am I done? No, what do I do next? Move the 2 over. So I've got x squared plus 2 equals y. Now, this is the right answer, but it's not written correctly. Because I'm looking for the inverse of x, when I rewrite it, I need to rewrite it as the inverse of the function, okay? So it's going to be written like this. So I can't just say y equals. It has to be f raised to the negative 1 of x. Okay, this problem. For f of x equals 1 divided by x minus 1, find the inverse of x. So f of x equals 1 over x minus 1. What is my first step? Replace this with y. What's my next step? Switch the x and y around. Now, Again, my goal is to get y by itself, but y is in my denominator, and I can't touch it right now until I get it in my numerator. So how am I going to get y into my numerator? How do I get rid of the denominator? Take the reciprocal and multiply by the reciprocal. So I'm going to take what's on bottom down here, and I'm going to multiply it on both sides. So if I multiply by the reciprocal over here on the right-hand side, what happens with the y minus 1 and the y minus 1? They cancel each other out, and I'm just left with 1. And over here on the left-hand side, it's x times y minus 1. Now, right now, y minus 1 has parentheses around it, meaning that it's bound together. I still can't touch that y. So I need to get rid of those parentheses, meaning this x has got to go. So how am I going to get that x to the right-hand side? Divide by x. Now, what happens with the x on top and the x on bottom? They cancel out, and I'm left with y minus 1 equals 1 over x. Am I done? What do I have to do? Add 1 to both sides. So now when I rewrite my answer, the inverse of x equals 1 over x plus